I want to tell you a little story. Recently, somebody asked me about this movie called Family Business from 1989. And he asked me about this scene that he saw where the character comes to this Jewish dinner, raises his glass of wine, and says, L'chaim. He's like, is that accurate? I said, yeah, Jews say L'chaim. But I wanted to know, what was that Jewish dinner scene? So I watched the movie. Next thing I knew, I was watching a bunch of movies that had a Pesach Seder in it. So that's what this video is all about. We're going to look at these 6 movies and discuss how they all depict the Passover Seder, this meal that Jews have on the first 2 evenings of the holiday of Passover. Welcome back to Yiddish Shekhinah Club. My name is David, and on this channel, Yiddishkeit, we explore what it means to be Jewish. Personally, I like to look at Jewish history, culture, and tradition. And in our Jewish Film Club, we look at movies that depict Jewishness. And so I'm very excited to jump into the movies that depict the Passover Seder. But before we jump into the movies, I want to play a brief clip from the comedian Sebastian Maniscalco. I think it's going to be the perfect introduction to help us understand so many of the different cultural elements going on in these movies.
I went to my first Passover dinner. That's what she's like, my mother's going to have Passover. Okay, we'll go to the dinner. 7:30, we sit down at her mother's house. I'm starving, right? Starving. They start passing out pamphlets, like reading material. I'm like, what's going on? What are we doing here? What's with the... She's like, no, we read for 2 hours. 2 hours.
So a Seder is technically a meal that you have on the holiday of Passover. However, there's much more to it. The reading material that is given out is known as a Haggadah. It's either a pamphlet or a hardcover book that contains the story of the Exodus, but it also has different parts to it. It has instructions and songs and rituals are all in this book.
I said, listen, I'm Italian. As soon as I sit at a table, I got to have bread within 15 seconds of sitting down, all right? I need something to do with my right hand. I need some oil coming out. We got oil? I need oil now. Hungry.
But traditionally, people do not eat bread on Passover. It's known as chametz, or leavened bread. Instead, we eat flatbread known as matzah.
And the food they start bringing out, oh God, terrible, terrible food. Jews have no idea what the hell they're doing in the kitchen. These people have no cuisine. Celery, crackers, jam. I'm like, what is it? We're losing people. People are leaving. We need food.
The foods he mentioned, crackers, celery, and jam, are referring to specific things that happen at the Seder. So the crackers are obviously the matzah flatbread that symbolizes affliction and redemption. The celery, or really any vegetable, can be dipped into salt water to symbolize the tears. But a lot of people use parsley. I personally grew up using potatoes. The jam is something called Charoses, which you can think of as like a fruit salad, kind of. It's basically chopped apples and wine, and people add in other spices or nuts and things like that. That's supposed to symbolize the mortar that was used to create the Egyptian cities when the Israelites were slaves. All right, so let's move on to our first movie. And I had to start with the movie called When Do We Eat? Because it's the only movie on this list that is dedicated in its entirety to this topic of the Passover dinner meal. This movie is going to contain the most amount of Seder references, so let's just jump right in.
Fastest Seder on earth, page 7. Here's the Seder plate.
Not as nice as my mother's, but we all know what happened to that one.
So that special plate that sits at the center of the Seder table is known as a ka'ara, and it contains these symbolic foods we mentioned, like the vegetables that are dipped, the charoses, the chopped apples. It contains some other things, egg, a chicken leg, all have symbolic meaning. And then, of course, is maror, or the bitter herbs, which usually people use a horseradish.
Here's the egg, here's the bone.
The lamb, not a chicken neck.
The greens, the charoset.
Made with kosher wine.
And the horseradish.
Which I bought extra strong because some of us have a lot to atone for.
And I love the grandfather just like sniffing it and getting like high off the horseradish. Dude, every Seder has one person like this.
Wait, Mom, there's a beautiful melody for the holiday blessing. It goes like, Baruch atah.
No melody.
This is Vanessa. Hi, sweetie. It's my client.
Unbelievable. Cheers.
Stop, nobody drink. Dad, these are prayers, they matter.
Ethan, when you have a job, a house, a table, you can run the Seder. Until then, just shut up.
This is a good moment to pause and just explain the dynamics of this film. So basically, there's this family that's pretty secular / reform, and their oldest son, Ethan, was a successful business person, but then lost all his money and had this spiritual awakening and became a Chabad chassid, meaning he is very religious now. He's constantly quoting the Rebbe and saying these different mystical Jewish ideas. Meanwhile, his father is like not interested in it. He's like, let's keep moving.
But why have a Seder if all you're gonna do is rush through it?
Because that's what Jews do. Page 9.
So the Seder itself has several stages to it. If you look at this graphic from a really old Passover Haggadah, you can see that the meal is broken into a bunch of steps. But this is a very misleading graphic because it makes it appear like each of these stages is equal in length and time, but they're not. The fifth stage, Magid, takes up the bulk, the lion's share of the time at the Seder. And that's because that's when the whole retelling of the Passover story, the Exodus, that's when it's retold. And that takes a long time. It could take several hours.
Guys, the Seder has power. It's not just about our ancestors escaping from the Pharaoh in Egypt. It's about us escaping from impatience and anger and envy, from our own inner pharaohs.
Ethan, focus on your own inner selfishness and stop interrupting.
This is very apropos for this character, the Chabad Chassid, because this is a very Kabbalistic, mystical idea. This comes from the fact that the word Egypt in Hebrew is Mitzrayim, which shares the same root from the word Meitzar, which means constraint. And the opposite of constraint in the mystical view is Merchav, which means expansion. And so this idea that Egypt is not just a physical place where the Israelites were enslaved, but it's also a spiritual place where our souls can be constrained. And so the whole idea of Passover is redemption, and in a personal sense, it means a personal liberation where our spirits are able to expand and soar and sing, and we can become our truest selves.
Here's the matzah. Here's the middle matzah. I break it in half, take the larger piece, and I wrap it. This is the Afikoman.
This next thing he did, which is breaking the middle matzah and then hiding a piece away, called the Afikoman. This is supposed to symbolize all future redemptions.
Later, when I go wash my hands, kids will hide it. After dinner, I ransom it back from them. We can end this whole thing.
No. The way you're supposed to do it is you hide it, and the kids find it.
Peg, that's your way. We all know why we don't do it that way anymore.
I found it! I win the prize!
Ooh, yeah.
What'd you find, Daddy?
Where you hid it?
Really?
Yeah.
You little cheater. Leave the boy alone.
I was only trying to help. You hid it way too well.
Nobody could find it.
It was 15 years ago.
In many families, there is some sort of custom surrounding this piece of matzah that's hidden, the Afikoman, where either the father hides it, and if the children find it, they get a prize. Or in other families, the way I grew up was that the children have to kind of snatch it away from the father when he's not looking. And then when it's time to eat the Afikoman at the end of the Seder, the father has to essentially ransom that piece of matzah back, and the children can ask for, I don't know, like a new bike or something.
Vanessa?
This is the bread of affliction. Let all who are hungry.
Don't you dare.
Don't you dare.
This is Vanessa? No, we don't want the aquarium moved. We want the fish freed.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So now comes the fifth and the largest stage of the Seder, called Magid. And this is the part where they read from the book and tell the story. And it opens with something called the Mah Nishtanah, or the 4 questions. The next movie is actually going to take us into the world of the Mah Nishtanah in a very beautiful way, so stay tuned for that in just a moment. The Mah Nishtanah is about asking, why is this night different from all other nights? And the point of that is to create intrigue where the children, and really anybody at the Seder meal, starts to take an interest into the Exodus narrative and gets involved in the idea behind the Seder.
Read the damn questions before I rip your tongue out of your mouth.
Should have given you 2 tabs. You're such a prick.
What'd you say?
How is this night different from all other nights? On all other nights, we eat either leavened bread or matzah. Why on this night only matzah? On all other nights, we eat all kinds of herbs. Why on this night only bitter herbs? On all other nights, we don't dip our food at all. Why on this night do we dip it twice? On all other nights, we sit upright or reclining. Why on this night only reclining?
Okay, so what's happening now is basically one of the sons is kind of a pothead and he decides to slip the dad some ecstasy. And so mid-Seder, the father just starts tripping and seeing visuals, and he starts seeing like these priests from the temple, like he thinks he's Moses for a while. It just goes totally off the chain.
We need to move on. Okay. 4 times the Torah tells us, and you shall tell your child. From this we infer that there are 4 kinds of children, just like our family.
After this comes something called the 4 sons, or more inclusively, the 4 children. This idea means that there are 4 types of people that would attend the Passover Seder that the Torah was referring to, and there's a different way to tell the story to different people.
One is wise, one is wicked, one is simple, and one does not know how to ask.
Peggy, got 5 kids here.
We do. I'm so sorry, dear, really. I'm sorry, dear.
And this movie takes that idea and totally runs with it by showing us many different types of people that attend the Passover Seder.
Not once nor twice was our destruction planned, but in every generation our enemies rise up to destroy us.
Yet the Holy One, blessed be He, delivers us from their hands.
This part of the Seder is really important and powerful. It's known as the Vihi She'amda, and we're going to see how it comes up several times in the movies we'll take a look at. This is the moment where we connect our story, whether positive or negative, to the people that came before us, as we're going to hear the grandfather explain.
Could have been more joyful.
What joyful? This in the fatal love me, love you business. Nonsense. And you thank God for deliverance, you maniac. The Egyptians only wanted to enslave us, but the Philistines wanted us dead. So did the Babylonians, so did the Greeks, so did the Romans. Then came the Inquisition in Spain, the pogroms in Russia, the Nazis in Germany, who put numbers on my arm. Killed Ira's mama and his 2 brothers.
You could see the disconnect between the generations, where the grandfather, who went through some of the worst atrocities of the 20th century, he is very much in the mindset that this is a literal Egypt that we are escaping, while the son, who grew up in America in a very safe and protected environment, to him, his Egypt is an emotional place, a place of inner spiritual redemption.
Grandpa, the enemies in every generation are the forces that hold us back from becoming the man or woman that we want to be. Anger, prejudice, lust.
Those are feelings. The bastards are real.
But at this point, we're reaching the end of Magid, and at this point, we're supposed to raise our cups and say a prayer to thank God for our salvation. But in this family, they're all kind of bummed out because of the crazy shenanigans that was going down the whole time. So it's up to the girlfriend of one of the daughters to actually get everyone amped up and ready to thank God.
Now, little girl, lift your damn cups. Wherefore, it is our duty to thank, to praise, to honor, to glorify, to exalt, to commend, to bless, to extol, and to acclaim him who performed all these miraculous deeds for our fathers and for us. He brought us forth from bondage to freedom, from anguish to joy, from darkness to great light, from servitude to redemption. Let us therefore sing before him a new song. Praise ye the Lord. Hallelujah.
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 All right, let's jump into our second movie. This one is called Left Luggage. It takes place in Belgium, in Antwerp, in the 1970s. The basic idea of the story is that there's a woman named Chaya who grew up secular Jewish, and unaffiliated. She gets a job to be a nanny for a very Hasidic family. And she gets along with the wife, but there's a lot of tension between her and the father of that family. And there's also a little boy named Simcha, who at the beginning of the film is selectively mute. But at this point, when Passover arrives, Simcha has already developed some ability to speak, but yet there's still a lot of tension with the father.
Label, what do you think? It's a wonder, even a wonder.
You know the lift is out of order. I had to walk up all the stairs. I was looking for the concierge. He's never there. When you need it. What is that?
It's a wonder. Label, listen. Wait, Label. Koi vey, let him have it. He loves
Simcha,
it.
we don't have such toys in the house. No, you learn nothing from it.
Simcha can talk, Mr. Kalman. Your boy can talk.
It is true, Label. You heard him yourself.
He can say lots of words. He can say anything.
You could see right away that the dad is not interested in seeing anything other than his perspective. The fact that his son is actually speaking and saying words is a huge, huge accomplishment for that little boy and a huge milestone. But the father is so obsessed with a certain image of like what his son is supposed to be that he's not even able to see it, and he right away comes to shut it down.
You heard him say quack, didn't you? Quack, quack.
My son is saying quack, quack. At the age when he should be saying his prayers.
Talk, Simcha.
At the age when he should be asking the 4 questions at the Seder.
Wow, so you can see that one of the milestones that the father expects of his son Simcha is to say the Mah Nishtanah at the Seder. Simcha, who is, I guess, developmentally delayed, he was not even able to speak at first. So the fact that now he's even talking is already huge. Another sign that we see of his delay is the fact that whenever he gets really nervous, he just, well, pees in his pants.
I peed in my pants.
So Chaya, the nanny, is determined to teach Simcha how to say the Mah Nishtanah and to show the father that, in fact, Simcha is capable if only he takes a softer approach. So she goes to her parents' neighbor, an older Jewish man named Mr. Appleschmidt, and he teaches her the Mah Nishtanah.
More questions for the Seder? I'll teach you the Mah Nishtanah. It's very easy. Listen. Mah Nishtanah alaylo azeh mikol alaylos. Repeat. Mikol alaylo.
Wow, so this is really accurate to the way I grew up. I'm sure you watching right now are nodding your head saying, yeah, that's actually how the Mah Nishtanah goes. What's cool about this also is that this actor who's playing Mr. Appleschmidt is Chaim Tobel, the same person who played Tevye in the famous Fiddler on the Roof from the 70s.
I can't.
You can, of course you can. You've got 2 more weeks. Come on.
So let's skip a little bit ahead to the day before Passover, known as Erev Pesach, or the eve of the holiday. As Chaya is approaching the Hasidic family's home, she sees that a bunch of children are outside with little fires dancing around it, and she's like, what's going on? And this is something known as Biur Chametz. Remember that on Passover, you're not supposed to eat any bread. You're not even allowed to own any leavened product. And so there's this ritual to take the bread and to burn it outside. In fact, you can see this ritual going back way into history. This is an illustrated Haggadah from the late 1400s. You can see how on the left side, there's a man looking for the leavened bread in his home. And then on the right side is another man taking that leavened bread and burning it in the fire.
What's going on? I'm cleaning up for Passover. Get rid of all the breadcrumbs. No use there the Passover.
How's it going, darling?
I won't pee my pants, will I?
No, you'll be fine. Don't worry.
Again, you could see this emphasis on peeing his pants. This kid, Simcha, is really, really nervous to say the Mah Nishtanah.
So, how's your rehearsal going? Huh, Mr. Simcha?
I love that scene so much. Oh my God. This is such Seder core. It gets to like Something so deep, I can't even explain it. Yeah, just wow. Okay, so now it's time for the actual Seder night. You can see them singing a song. This is an interesting moment because this song actually comes from the end of the Haggadah, and it's known as Who Knows One.
And now, Simcha. Go on, Simcha.
He can't. But I can. Mah Nishtanah halayla ze mikol ha'elot shebachol ha'layot anu ha'metzumatza halayla ze mikol ha'elot.
Oh my goodness, this is also such a powerful scene. That shot where we're pulling in between the candles, both on Simcha and then on the dad. Whoa, it just, yeah, really hits. It's a very powerful moment. You could just see how Simcha is going through his own personal redemption in the sense that he's going from restricted, not being able to speak in front of his father, to expansion where he's actually singing the Mah Nishtanah. But as we'll see, the dad is very much stuck in his own Egypt.
It's very good, Simcha, very good. But you made a mistake in the first question, you know that. You said Mikol Ha'elosh, and it should be Kol Ha'matzo. So repeat after me.
I don't think that's fair. Why'd you treat Simcha like that? He's been rehearsing the questions for weeks.
Could you ask her to stop talking to me?
No, I won't stop. I'm standing up for your son. I think it's unfair to treat him like that.
Send her away.
No, I won't leave.
Then I shall leave.
Chaya, don't! Please leave this home immediately.
No, I will not! How can you treat your son like that?
Those are the rules. And as long as you're under my roof, I demand you respect my rules.
I do respect your rules, Mr. Kalman, and your religion. But in your religion, there is no respect for anyone else.
Wow, powerful movie. One day I'm going to have to cover this movie by itself. Oh, it's just so incredible. There's so much there. This moment where Chaya challenges the father, Mr. Kelman, we get to the heart of the father's constraint. We go back to the concept that in every generation there are those that try to destroy us, and the father, who is also a Holocaust survivor, is still in that world. He hasn't really left that Egypt yet. And the reaction that he has towards Simcha is really just playing out the trauma that he has from losing his family during the war.
I don't understand. Are you afraid of loving your son?
This is me with my father and my little brother of blessed memory. I saw them being hanged in the camp in front of my eyes. You know why they were hanged? Because they refused to spit on Torah and curse the Almighty. And you talk to me of no respect.
Because Simcha looked so much like his brother that he lost during the war, to him this seems like the chance for him to get his brother back, and that he must hold Simcha to such a high standard in order to properly honor the memory of his brother. But what he doesn't realize is that Simcha is not his brother. Simcha is his own person, going through his own challenges and his own obstacles and growth around that. So we get some insight into why the father was being like this, which is connected to the theme of Passover, the Seder, and our personal sense of oppression and redemption, and also some of the most beautiful moments around the Seder, where they're singing the Mah Nishtanah. All right, so let's move on to the movie that actually inspired this video, which is Family Business, starring some big names from the 80s and 90s, Dustin Hoffman, Sean Connery, and Matthew Broderick. The movie opens at a Passover Seder, where we see Matthew Broderick reciting the Mah Nishtanah in Hebrew.
Shebachol halelot ein anumat bilin afilu pa'em echat halayla haseh shetei fe'ami.
Thank me for the leg of lamb.
You see how Adam remembers his Hebrew for the mind like that? Well, what'd I say?
I just love this moment because, as you saw with Simcha, the Mah Nishtanah is drilled into children's brains when you're growing up. And so it's basically impossible to forget. But by the time you're an adult, you're not spending weeks practicing it like you were when you were a child. So you show up to the Seder, you're like, I 100% remember this. But then like halfway through, you're like, how does it go again?
Time to let the angel in.
Yeah, Nat, how come the angel gets a bigger glass, huh?
Your material is getting stale.
Better leave the chain on, Grandma. This is the Bronx.
This is another ritual that occurs at the Seder. They call it the angel, but more accurately, it's Elijah the prophet. The idea is that Elijah is this spirit that visits everyone's homes on the Passover Seder night, and that we open the door to let him in, and we actually fill up a cup for the prophet that nobody drinks from. It just sits at the center of the table. And this, like the Afikoman, represents the redemptions that are yet to come, both personal and national. Opening the door for the prophet, the angel, becomes very important because Matthew Broderick's character and his father have this falling out, and they make up at the Passover Seder at the end of the film. And this is when he comes in and says L'chaim. But he doesn't actually knock on the door. He waits for the grandmother to open it for Elijah.
Oh, good to you. Look who's here.
Grandma, I've been outside a half an hour waiting for you to open the door for Elijah. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
All right, so let's move on to a much lighter depiction of the Seder, and that comes to us from Curb Your Enthusiasm Season 5, known as the Seder episode.
Do you even know what this thing is called?
This is a Charoses.
Very good.
It's a lot like ambrosia, except...
I wish my mother were alive to hear you say that word out loud.
Yeah, I wish my mother could hear me say... My mother would flip if she knew I was doing this.
Looks good.
Thank you.
This is a cute moment where Cheryl is making Charoses. She's chopping up apples, and they're discussing their Seder plans.
It seems like a lot of trouble you people go through for this. You know what I mean?
You people? I don't know if I like that so much.
You Jews?
That's
Is that better?
Yeah.
Now, without getting into all the details of this episode, you can go check that out for yourself. Larry is trying to do all these social machinations, and he's trying to invite all sorts of different people to the Seder. And the excuse that he uses is that it's tradition to invite people who don't have a place to go for the Seder to your home. And this is, in fact, true. This is how Maggid opens, that anyone who needs a meal should come to us and eat.
I had no idea you liked Mac and Ethel so much.
Well, you don't understand because you're not Jewish, okay?
Oh, it's a Jewish
But it's a Jewish thing. It's sort of like a tradition, you know. If Jews
Invite
don't...
the cranky neighbors
Well,
to...
if Jews don't have any place to go for Seder, you're supposed to invite them.
And we see the opening of Larry's Seder. And again, it starts with the first step, which is Kiddush, which is making a blessing over wine.
Everybody have a nice big swig of wine.
Okay, that goes the fun part of this episode. When Larry takes the matzah, the Afikoman, and hides it away and tells the children to go look for it. And this starts a whole level of drama.
Hey, guess what? Okay, get ready, kids. You know what's in here? Matzah. And I'm gonna hide this, and you gotta go find it, and whoever finds the matzah is gonna get $1. Okay? Okay, I'm gonna hide it now. Don't look. Okay, kids, you come look for the matzah now.
Well, I saw Mr. Dunkel whisper in his son's ear, and then the boy went right over and found the matzah. Oh, my God. Yeah, because he saw me hiding it. We made eye contact. He saw it. Well, there you go.
This harkens back to the moment in When Do We Eat, where there's all these shenanigans going on around the Seder, especially around the Afikoman.
When am I gonna get my dollar?
Oh, yeah, your dollar. That's right. Let me ask you a question, Stevie. I noticed that you went to the bookcase once. What made you go back there a second time?
Hey, look. He found the matzah, pay up.
No, I'm just trying to find out why you went back
There's
to the
no need
bookcase
for
a
a
second
third degree.
time.
The boy found the Afikoman, just pay him the dollar.
How come you went back, Stevie?
Look, stop it. He found the matzah, pay up. That's that.
He found the matzah?
Yeah.
Because you told him where it was hidden.
That
Didn't
is
you?
a lie.
Didn't you?
That is a lie. You don't know anything. How would you know that?
How do I know?
How would you know?
My friend told me. That's how I know. He saw you whisper in your son's ear and then watched as he ran to the bookcase and got the matzah.
All right, so let's begin to wrap up our list. The next one we have is a very interesting movie known as Uncut Gems, which is about this guy played by Adam Sandler who works in the Diamond District and is essentially a gambling addict. He cannot sit still with money for more than 1 second. And there's this moment where he owes a lot of money to this loan shark who happens to be his brother-in-law. And they're all sitting together at this Seder. And again, I recommend going to watch the movie for the full context, but I just want to point out some of the things that they do at this Seder in Uncut Gems.
Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'adam. Dip the celery.
So it opens on this ritual of Karpas where they take the vegetable, in this case celery, dip it into salt water, and eat it.
Howie, why don't you read the plagues?
Yeah. Ma, you take the Hebrew and I'll take the English.
Yes, my dear.
So then they jump to a later part in Magid, which is known as the 10 plagues. And this is where we read the list of the plagues, but also dip our finger into the cup of wine and take a little bit of wine out, which is done in reverence of the 10 plagues.
Dam,
Okay, blood,
tzfardea,
frogs,
kenim,
lice,
aruv,
wild animals,
davar,
pestilence,
shchin,
boils,
barak,
hail,
arba,
locusts,
choshech,
darkness,
makat bachurim.
death of the firstborn, hardcore back there. That can still happen.
You can see the inclusion of the Afikoman, where this time the parents hid the matzah and the children have to find it.
Don't look at us, don't look at him, don't look at me, find it yourself.
Come on, keep looking.
Now warm. Warmer. Very warm.
Keep looking, keep looking.
I found it!
That's my boy! Find your stuff, we're leaving soon.
Alrighty, let's get to the last film on our list, and this comes from episode 4 of the miniseries Unorthodox. This episode opens at a Passover Seder. The miniseries is about a woman named Esther who leaves her Hasidic background and finds a new life in Germany. This moment in Unorthodox is very similar to the one in Left Luggage, where we see how this young child is super duper nervous to say the questions in front of all the adults.
Tate, Lein, ich will bei dir für Kasches fragen. Tate, Lein, ich hab dir gefragt für Kasches Zamoichel and für Minateretz.
Another thing I need to point out, when you look at this scene, you can see that the men are dressed very uniquely at this dinner. They're all wearing this white robe called a kittel, which is, again, meant to symbolize the reverence for this special meal.
And the teretz of them is Avudim hayini lefaroi b'mitzrayim Vayoytzi yeini adoinoi Eloheini misham Ve'ilu loi hoytzi hakudosh baruch hu es aboiseini misham Harayoni, Ivaneni, Ivaneni, Mishebudim hayini lefaroi b'mitzrayim.
So what the grandfather just read is the portion that comes right after the 4 questions. And this is, again, the idea that if God hadn't taken our forefathers out of Egypt, we would still be there. And of course, this cannot be literal because the Egyptian empire that existed 3,000 years ago no longer exists today. The idea, rather, is that if we weren't taken out through an act of redemption, then we would still have that mindset. We would still be stuck emotionally, mentally, spiritually in our own personal Egypt.
Ins der Zeilen von Yitzias Mitzrayim, sich zu der Mannen von der Zures. Die Spleis von der Mitzrim, na Reich von der Inquisitie, Chmielnitsky, der Pogromen, der Nazis, die Machschem.
And then the grandfather takes a pivot and kind of jumps to a later portion, the Vihisha Amda, that we saw mentioned in previous movies. We see again that the grandfather connects the whole point of the Seder to this idea that in every generation there is some sort of Jewish suffering, and that we connect our suffering to the previous generations all the way back to Exodus. And just like they had their redemption, we can have our redemption now.
Oim dem alleine lechal sein. Wenn uns haben getraut in se Front in Schreinem hat der Eibischte ins gestruft. Wenn uns haben getauscht in se Levischen Luschen hat der Eibischter ins gestruft. Wenn uns vergessen wer ins Senden bringt man auf sich der Eibisches Zorn. Wegen dem sitzen wir alle durch Hand. Ins weiß mir, wer mir sennen. Und das ist der einzigste Weg zu seiner Ben Cheuren.
And before we go, I just want to show you one more moment from Unorthodox where she goes into the kitchen during the Seder. And first of all, you can see how the whole thing is just covered in foil. And this is because some people are very strict about having unleavened product, that we need to cover anything that touched leavened product during the year. Also remember that the Seder takes a long time. If you don't pregame and eat before you arrive at the Seder, then you're going to be really hungry. So we've all been there in the kitchen, sneaking a potato or two and having a drink of water. Super duper relatable, just gotta say. All right, folks, that concludes the scenes that depict a Seder in movies. I'm really curious if there are any movies that I missed that have other Passover scenes and what you thought of the different elements that come up in these movies. If you're interested in Passover, then be sure to check out other videos on this channel that are about the Passover Haggadah. If you're interested in Jewish culture, then you, my friend, are in the right place. My name is David, and welcome to this channel.